Hello! Today we are looking at creating junk journal pages in Photoshop, so doing it digitally instead of using physical papers and ephemera. So I'm using a couple of different collections, a couple of different packs from my Etsy shop as a base, and we will get started now. So if you don't have Photoshop, you could probably use a couple of other softwares, but I am using Photoshop. That's what I've got, that's what I know. So if you can follow along, great. If you have any questions, let me know, and if you're using a different program, then let me know and I can see if there's a workaround to any of the particular actions that I do in Photoshop. Okay, jumping right in, we want to create a new file. So of course you can create it based on the size of your junk journal, or if you're just playing around, you can choose any size. I'm going for 8 by 11, I think it is, the US letter. I could also do an A4. This is really just to show you if you're printing it out. You can obviously resize it when you're going to print, but whatever size you want to work with is fine. And I'm choosing a background colour just to make it a bit more interesting. I'm going for a kind of aged Victorian junk journal page today, so I'm starting with a dark brown. So we have that page open up. I have a background. I'm clicking on the action or the selection button, and we're going to bring over a few different pages. So these are background pages that I have in my pack. So I'm dragging these onto the canvas. I'm dragging them all on, and then we will do some magic to get them to work together. So the first one, I'm going in with darken, and then I'm going down the list to see what type of blend mode suits it best. And this is completely based on personal preference. I'm just going through these layers one by one to apply different effects so you can see part of the layer through the other layers. It's just a nice way to create a sort of double exposure or multiple layers all together without having to cut and chop parts of them off, and they all sort of layer to make a really nice vintage looking document. So with the third layer, I've actually changed the opacity as well. And for the last one, I really liked those lines through the middle. It looked like the page had been folded, and it just added to the aged look on it. So what I'm doing for this one, I didn't want to completely take away that line in the middle, so I didn't want to change the opacity of the full page. So what I'm doing is I'm putting a masking layer on, and then I'm just painting away the layers. You have to make sure you're actually on the masking layer, so click the box beside the layer, the white box, after you've added the mask, and then you go over with a black pen. I've got kind of a what do you call it, a frayed edge, or a sort of not quite a round pen, so it's giving more of a gradient to it, and my computer seems to be laggy a little bit just now, so it took me a while for it to catch up. But what I'm doing is just taking away some of the areas on the sides so that you can see the pages underneath, and we're just left mostly with that cross area in the middle. So you can see on the mask, everywhere we've drawn with the black is the areas that will show through, or essentially be taken away or masked. You can see, because I've got opacity down at 37%, that some of the areas are grey and some of the areas are black. It just depends how much you have gone over them. So I've just grouped those layers, and I'm naming them background just to keep them separate. and I'm adding a layer here. I'm going to go in with my sketchy brush again, make sure the opacity is down and the brush isn't too big, and I'm just going to, I'll be actually painting or drawing on this layer, so I've changed it to dark brown. I'm just going to be sort of sketching a very light line on the edge of the paper, just to add that sort of vintage aged effect, like the edges of paper sort of wear away with time. So it's just to give it a little bit of interest. So if you hold the brush quite a little bit far away from where you're wanting to paint, and it'll just end up the edges of the brush will, I'm not explaining this very well, but you can kind of see what I'm doing on the screen. I'm not painting directly on the page, but I'm holding it close to the page, and then the sort of edges of the brush just touch the edge, and then it gives you a little line rather than having it too much. You don't want it to take over. So that's just based on my brush settings. Obviously yours might look different if you have a different brush, a different size, different opacity, etc. And you notice sometimes I'm actually going over it 2 or 3 times. It's all very loose and sketchy. It's not going to be an exact straight line, and it's not going to be perfect on all sides because it's supposed to be an aged document. So as I'm going up this side, I realise that the pages I put in earlier aren't really taking up the whole canvas. So what I decided to do was stop painting and go back to the backgrounds, just highlight that whole group and drag out the pages a little bit just to cover that white line. There's not really anything too vital or important in those pages that we couldn't have just cropped off a wee bit, so I just dragged them all at once and then continue to line the edge of the paper. As you can see, the top left is a lot darker than the other sides, but that's fine. And you can also, because this is on a separate layer, you can also apply blend mode to this as well to change the effects or to make it lighter. You can do a lot with it, so especially if it's on another layer, so you really want to do that if you're going down this route. I'm just going to keep it on normal mode and crack on with the next step. So I'm grabbing a sheet of tags that I have. This is a separate kit. So this is, if you print it off, it's a 8x5 by 11 white page with some tags that you would have to cut out. But because we're in Photoshop, we can just remove the background and we can cut out the tags. So to remove the background, you have to rasterize the layer, which you just have to right click on it. Right click on the layer, click rasterize, and then you'll be able to remove that background. And because I just want one of these tags, I've just put the marquee tool and made a square around it, cut and paste just with my Control-C, Control-V keys on my keyboard, and deleted the original layer just to get that away because I just wanted the one tag. And now I'm going to add some drop shadow to the tag so it looks like it's actually on top of the page rather than being part of the design. I'm just playing about with the opacity and the distance, etc., just to until I get it right. But again, it's a preference thing and it's completely up to yourself. But I will say that the angle, if you have that use global light checkbox ticked, then if you apply different shadows to different things on one page or one file, then they all will use the same angle. I think that's the only thing they use the same. You can change the opacity of different ones, but the angle is the same across all of them, which makes it a little more true to life. So now we're adding a sort of writing page, a blank page, just so there's somewhere for us to actually journal or write notes or whatever you like to do with your journal. So I'm making sure it's not the top layer, but it's also under the edge a little bit, even though it's not down at the bottom, and I'm adding some shadow into that as well, just to make that look as if it's on top again. So we want a layering effect, so that's what I'm trying to achieve here. Just wanted it a bit darker. I wasn't sure, playing around with it, so that's the beauty of these things. The effects you can change. You can go back and you can change them later if you end up not liking them. So now I'm bringing over some ephemera, and you can see this is like a square design. The background has been taken out, but there's still some white left. So if this was a physical thing that you were printing, then all that background would be white, and there wouldn't really be any way around that unless you had a Cricut and were able to cut very fine lines, or you could do it by hand, but it would be time consuming. So the beauty of doing digital pages and using Photoshop is the fact that you can have those blend modes and completely take out all the white just by changing it to a blend mode of darken or multiply, something like that. And because there's quite a harsh line on the right hand side, because it's just a square clip art, I'm adding this flower to cover that a little bit and leaving that on a normal mode. The beauty of blend modes as well is the layers underneath do tend to show through, so that gives it a sort of nice double exposure effect, I guess. So I'm just adding a border of flowers to the bottom and doing a very similar thing. So they've got the white background there. I've cut out some of it, but not all of it. So I'm changing the blend mode, and then you see some of the lines on the writing paper and some of the texture from the background as well. So it's tying it all together, which I really like. That's much of the reason why I prefer to do pages in Photoshop rather than trying to layer physically. So now I'm bringing in another piece of clip art. This is like a doily type image and I was really annoyed that there was white in this because the background white and the actual white in the design of the clip art, the Photoshop doesn't know the difference between that. So if you use the blend modes on this, then it tends to remove the actual design as well, or makes it sort of see-through, which is not what I wanted in this case, because I wanted it to look like a physical doily or piece of fabric. So what I did instead is I went down to the FX and I selected the blending options, and because I'm looking to get rid of the bright white background, I selected the current layer at the bottom. I pressed Alt and clicked on the arrow on the white side, and I dragged it a little bit to the right to try and get rid of the background white, but not the white on the actual doily fabric. So I think you can see it quite well here. So it's got that brown fabric on the outside and the white fabric on the inner circle, but it's showing up as more of a physical thing here, and it's more it's not see-through like the flowers at the top and the bottom, so it looks as if it's a fabric add-on that's been positioned on top of the paper. So that's what I was going for, and I hope I have achieved it. So the next step I wanted to do was to add a little pocket. So you may have seen folios and pockets of some description in physical junk journals, which are really fun to make your pages a bit more interactive. So what I've done is I've taken the fussy cut sheet from one of the packs, and I'm just cutting out the actual front pocket area of a leather style pocket. So I'm just trying to clean up the rest of the graphics that happened to come with it, so that it's just this pocket. I took off the little flaps that you would fold under to actually stick it to the page, because obviously we don't need to do that with a digital page. And I'm going to flip it as well because I want it to be on the right hand side at the bottom, and I am going to enlarge it just so it's a little bit bigger. And then I was thinking about moving it down so it's underneath the flowers. I'm not sure. I'm just going to leave it at the top for now and add a shadow again so it looks as if it's physically on top of the page and there is a bit of a shadow. So I'm just messing about with these controls until it looks a bit more realistic. Again, like I said, if you move the angle of the shadow, it will update all of your shadows that you have used in this file, but it shouldn't be too much of a problem. And then I thought that the tag at the top was kind of just floating there. It didn't really look very good, so I decided to move it down to add it to the pocket. So this is why I tried to keep everything on separate layers as well. And my Photoshop was just having a bit of a meltdown. I usually have issues when I run out of space because I'm creating too many things, but let's carry on. So the tag is just on the layer below the pocket so that it looks like it's inside of it. So that's the trickery of using layers. So it's really fun to do, where you take different pieces and you tuck them in as if they are tucked into a little pocket. And I really liked this shape in the middle of this layer of ephemera, so I'm just going to cut that out. Again, rasterize the layer and remove the background, and then we can use the shape as it is, as if it has been cut out, and then it will fit just inside that pocket along with the tag and look like it's just been tucked in and adds to the overall effect. I didn't want it to be exactly the same angle as the tag. I'm changing the size a little bit just to see how it fits in. I wanted it to sort of stick out. Again, just to make it a bit more natural and not too much, not too specifically, what am I trying to say? Didn't want to make it look exactly like the tag, as if it was just a copy and paste. So I think we're almost done here, but I feel like the top right hand corner is now very bare because we took that tag away. So I'm just going to save my document, as you should always. Photoshop and all other programs can be a bit funny sometimes, so it's nice to save your work so you don't have to redo the full thing. So yeah, I'm just looking for something to add into that right side. These ephemera pieces are from my vintage ephemera bundle on my Etsy shop. I'll link it in the description. For the last thing, I added in this little boy reading his newspaper. Thought he fit the vibe very well, so I positioned him and then changed the blend mode so that he would fit in and not stand out so much. I want him to be part of the background design and not an extra piece on top. And I think that looks pretty good. I think we're going to end it there. I like how this has turned out. Please let me know about your experiences and if you prefer to make physical or digital junk journal pages. and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.